So I want to know why in 2026 every filmmaker should use an entertainment attorney in the age of AI and everything. Why can't I just go to ChatGPT? Jalene, I'm going to throw it over to you. Help us filmmakers out.
You know, with the onset of AI being so popular as a tool, I mean, some people are using it actually to create from uh, origin with no human contribution, right? But those that are old school, that understand the importance of building AI, IP, I should say, from scratch. Those are the people that I think understand more importantly why they need a lawyer, right? Because it's about protecting the creation, the originality of the creation, right? And building wealth and passing that on for other generations. Now, why do you need an entertainment attorney in particular? Unless you are an experienced entertainment attorney, you may not even know what it is that you need. You can get a contract that somebody gives you that you go and ask ChatGPT for, or you go and Google a template. But if you don't know and understand the business, you have no idea what's missing from that contract. And I tell everybody, if you do hire an attorney, because you have an entertainment related matter, make sure you hire the right entertainment attorney. Do not go to your uncle who's a real estate attorney. Do not go to a friend who does probate and wills. That's a total different industry. We don't even speak the same language. And lastly, I would say one of the reasons why you need an entertainment attorney is if you don't understand that show business is 10% show and 90% business, then you might be the person that's not quite about your business and you need a good entertainment attorney to help you with that. So those are the reasons why I think in 2026, everybody needs a good entertainment attorney.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I would agree with that. We all have heard of, and I've experienced where AI can hallucinate and tell you different things, and you want to make sure that you're getting the best information. So,
Absolutely.
for those people who don't know you, you are an entertainment attorney, as we've kind of set the stage, but you're also a filmmaker, author, a speaker. Why don't I kick it back over to you and you tell us your origin story? How did you get into this whole crazy entertainment space?
Absolutely. I have been in arts and entertainment since I was a youngin, as they say. And my first exposure to the arts, my mom took me to community theater, and I just fell in love with the stage, looking at all these live performance and the immediate applause from the audience and things like that. And then I used to watch Facts of Life, little Kim Fields on Facts of Life, and she got me interested in acting. She went to a private school. She was, little ponytails, pigtails like me. I'm like, oh, I can be next little girl on TV making folks laugh. So I really took an interest in acting at a young age. And my second grade teacher put me in speech contests, and apparently because I talked too much in class, and so it was in my system, as a kid growing up. And I did so many things growing up in New Orleans related to arts and entertainment. But then as an adult, graduating from college, I knew I wanted to pursue a career as an actor in the business, but I also didn't want to be a starving artist. So moving out, I was going to move out to LA, but I also knew smart enough that coming out of college, maybe I get a graduate degree so I can make myself more marketable, and didn't want to be this starving artist. And I thought, oh, great, maybe I go to law school because I can understand the small print in law school, but having that kind of background, right? There's so many people going through issues back then. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Tony Braxton, New Edition, just these different musical acts and athletes were having issues with management and stuff like that, and find out people were, stealing from them. And so I was like, hey, I'm going to be my best advocate. And I want to understand the small print, and I don't want to leave that to somebody else. So I honestly thought, let's go to law school. I heard that law school, some people make it, some people don't. Look to your left, look to your right. And but the one thing I did know, they teach you contracts in the first year. And that was a time that you couldn't just take a single class about contracts or go Google something, right? To figure out you could self teach. But no, I went to law school and actually end up 32 years later, still a practicing attorney. But I was smart enough that I knew that inner passion of being an actress was still going to drive my spirit, and still drives my spirit to this day. So I decided to, what better, practice law and but not just for myself, for to be able to lend myself and my services to others that are creatives in the business, and essentially help make this world a better place for us independent creatives. And so
Oh,
that's kind of how I essentially married the two backgrounds, my acting background with my law background, and I started a nonprofit for the arts. I'm very much all things arts and entertainment. But when I started out here in Houston, there wasn't really a film market. I did start off in music, and eventually got to evolve into the film world, and I've just never looked back. It's my safe space, my comfort spot, and I just love everything related to arts and entertainment.
yeah, no, that's great. I think that
Yeah.
shines through. We're connected on LinkedIn. I read your posts. I see what you're posting. So I think that definitely shines through there. Is there a mistake that you see filmmakers make that are kind of continuous, kind of the same thing over and over again, whether it be chain of title or option agreement or rights clearances? Is there something that you kind of just wish indie filmmakers knew? Like, please stop doing this mistake,
Right.
fill in the blank. Do you have little nuances like that you might be able to offer a thought on?
Yeah, and I think a part of it it's twofold. You have filmmakers that are really writers, right? They love creating the story, but they don't like the business associated with it, right? And then you have folks that wear all these hats and they understand the technical aspects of making a movie, writing a script, maybe hiring and building a team, but they're still not good at the business associated with it. And so, with that being said, I see a lot of people playing it small and not scaling up properly, right? Kind of shooting from the hip, kind of ego driven. I've seen all aspects there. And what happens with that, there's a lot of money that ends up getting left on the table because you don't know the rights that you hold and the asset that you've built, right? And so because you have these rights, this asset, this IP, you don't necessarily know how to protect it, or you thought you protected it and you didn't, or when you go into a contract, you're not familiar with you can yeah, yes, you can read the four corners of the contract, but because you don't have insight from experience on contract after contract after contract, transaction after transaction, situation after situation, you've not really built a repertoire of information to know this looks good. This is even better. This doesn't look so good. Something's missing here. I am leaving some money on the table. There's some rights that I should retain. Things like that. There's some kind of innate information that you should just kind of naturally, I think, over the progression of time, be able to identify a better contract for you. And because people are not kind of spending that time with that part of the business and don't have their business together, yes, they're missing out on essentially getting it not perfect but close to perfect, because we know there's always a concession, right? With contracts, there's negotiation, and it's really about what's a fair contract, kind of down the middle, because everybody wants, what's going to benefit them 100%. All that always doesn't work out that way, but if it's at least fair, and fair, one way to measure fairness is, if I can get in, how do I get out of that contract if it ends up being something that's not to my favor after all, right? Maybe the other side didn't hold up their end of the bargain. So it's kind of like, when you're in a marriage, like, what does a divorce look like if we end up going down that street? So yeah, I'm seeing in the general sense, filmmakers, again, just, either what they interpret in the contract, how they read a contract, the rush to sign a contract, kind of some general mistakes like that. When they take meetings with financiers and they're asked about chain of title, they're like, well, what's the chain of title? So even some of that 101 stuff does certainly get missed. And but I just recommend, I don't care how experienced you are as a filmmaker, as a writer, director, whatever your lane, actor, doesn't matter the amount of experience. I suggest, even if you feel like, well, I looked at the contract and I feel like I've negotiated everything to my favor, before you sign, pay a small consultation fee and have a lawyer lay last eyes on it. so that you can make sure and ensure that you did check all the boxes and that you understand things properly. So just in the general sense, that's pretty much what I'm seeing, how filmmakers sometimes kind of miss out on some things.
So it kind of in line with this. I think the answer is a little bit obvious to this first part, but I'll give it a two-parter. So when should we be reaching out to you? And I'm sure earlier the better, but on the same note, I also find sometimes it's too early. Like it's just an idea. They're just in ideation phase and they're already reaching out. And again, not saying you couldn't take a call. I'm just suggesting that maybe it needs to be baked a little more. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on when should we be reaching out? And then also, you kind of alluded to it just now, which I really like, is how best is it to come to you? Like, can I come to you with, a contract I've used previously, for instance, even though you might not have been the originator of it, and I know you're going to need to scrutinize that in order to be able to defend it, because that's what a lot of people don't know. Well, can I
Mhm.
just use this one? Not if you're using Jalene, because you have to be able to sign off on that
Mhm.
element of it, but it's also better than starting from zero, I
Right.
would imagine. So, when should we be coming to you? And then, how best is it to come with you?
Yeah. So one thing I say, we know when we're in development how expensive it could be, how much time things take. So I always like people to use their money wisely. Spending a lot of money on an attorney when things are not right, meaning you haven't done some due diligence, some research, understanding the market, understanding
Right.
the business that you're in, right? Sometimes it's a little premature. And so what I find is some clients come to me thinking they need a lawyer where they really need a coach,
Mm,
right?
hmm.
They need somebody to assess kind of where they stand in the business at that time to see what other services might be appropriate to engage at that point. One of the things I've done for years and years and years, because I'm also in the trenches, from the beginning on projects, because I'm a creative also, I do understand um, how much money it can take. With that being said, I try to discount my fees and I try to quote fees that are manageable for clients because I feel like the savings that I give you, put that back in your project. And eventually, if we're building a good relationship, anyway, you'll come back to me when it's appropriate. And then I also, tell people, hey, just put money in your budget for a lawyer. That's something that you don't want to discount. Do you want to carve out something? That's like, even when you produce a movie and you don't think about marketing, there, there's certain things that you should put in the budget. So yeah, I do find that sometimes people come to me with not enough understanding, right? Because they again, oftentimes they're writers, and I got a script, and hey, I thought I need to hire a lawyer to shop my script, but has your script gotten the appropriate feedback, coverage, notes? Has a professional looked at it first to even
Right.
know that your script is what you think it is, right?
Right.
So things, some preliminary things like that. And so I'm like, well, there's nothing for me to really take to a network. And I'm not technically a literary agent or a producer's rep, but I do have relationships where I can take a script to
Sure.
a network or someone in development. But it's premature to do that if the script's not where it should be. So just by example. So yeah, when as to how to come to me as it relates to specific contracts. Uh, like I said, I try to charge something manageable, but I do feel like I can charge you less if you already have a contract that you've used before and you want to use this same base contract for this new transaction. I need a lawyer to look at it, see is it tight enough? Is there anything I missed? These are the terms of this new deal. Can you incorporate them? Can you redline this agreement? I do have people that come to me for that. I have a client that's in theater and she has a number of contracts already signed for a production coming up, but she asked me to take a look at them because she wanted to make sure that they were tight enough for the next time, right? And then
Yeah.
I've had people come to me who, had another lawyer prepare the agreement and the deal wasn't as tight as they thought. Hey, can you make this a better situation for me. And yeah, so I meet people where they are. Some people have contracts, some people don't at all. Some people have a term sheet. They have a MOU, a memorandum of understanding. They have some emails where they've discussed back and forth what they've agreed to. Hey, can you take this and put it in a contract? And maybe they don't even know what contract is needed, which type of investment agreement or whatever is needed. So I can definitely help in all those scenarios. And I think, but I also think at least shoot an email to somebody like me and say, hey, this is where I am. I was wondering if it was time for me to bring you on, you
Smart.
know,
Hmm.
right? Because like I said, if you say you need a lawyer and I charge you a consultation fee and you don't tell me any different, I'm thinking I'm consulting you on some pending deal, right? Maybe I got a distribution contract and I needed somebody to look at it. But then when you get on and it feels like I'm a Catholic priest and I'm just listening to confessions, or right, or somebody's kind of venting about the process, or they just have a bunch of questions out of curiosity. I can answer all those things, but it doesn't necessarily carry the weight of needing a legal consultation.
Yeah.
But because I am business and legal affairs, BALA for short, I do understand that the questions are that kind of center around general business. And so I can certainly consult folks on that. But again, I would tell clients just to do a little research ahead of time so that you use the time wisely, spend your money wisely.
Yeah, I had a
Yeah.
friend of mine who did a fund, and funds can be super expensive to set up. There's a bunch of legality and SEC. I mean, it's all kind of craziness. And unfortunately, he used his attorney to educate him, and that was a
Mm-hmm.
very expensive bill. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it got super expensive, but he finally understood, and the attorney was kind of telling him like, "Hey, it's probably better people that are better suited for this. I'll teach you, but it's going to
Yeah.
be on retainer in my time."
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
always taught me like, "Ron, don't learn on an attorney's timeline,
Yeah.
because they're there for a different reason and they're
Yeah.
willing to teach you. They have the subject matter expertise,
Yeah.
but you might not need to." And you've even gone so far as to write a book called The
Yes.
Business of Stage, Screen, and In Between. If I'm a filmmaker, why would I need to pick up The Business of Stage, Screen, and In Between? What am I going to find in there that's going to help me out?
So when I started writing that book, it was because I produced my first play. Before I could finish the book, I produced a second play. So I went back and I was basically added all this experience from a producer standpoint of producing a play without having a theater degree, just kind of immersed myself in it. I had a law degree. I was an actor. I was the playwright, but the business of putting a play together was really kind of on the job training. So I decided, well, let me just address all that, all the pitfalls, how I bounced back, or you know what I mean, how I made it all work, not having a lot of money to put on a small play. So by the time I got through adding the second play in, the second play became a movie. So I had to
Mm,
go back and write that experience. But when I wrote and covered everything, and I'm talking from raising money, the importance of contracts, copyrights, trademarks, getting insurance, putting together a team, I realized this is not a book about producing your first play. This is a book for anybody that's an entrepreneur.
yeah.
And so that's the life it took on. So I market it towards filmmakers, musicians, performing artists, anybody that's in arts and entertainment that's an entrepreneur. But I've learned that a lot of people that are just in business have picked it up and read it because it's an easy read and I cover things that they would need to know also getting the EIN number,
Yeah.
setting up your LLC. So that's for any entrepreneur, really. And so that's why it's important. And going back to what I said earlier, show business is 10% show, 90% business. So the book helps you organize yourself in a professional manner like a business. If you don't treat your craft like it's a business, if you don't treat yourself as the writer, as the director, as the producer, as a business, then how do you step to business people to talk about business, right? Because perception is everything, and it's a it's perceived that that you're somebody to do business with if you're organized in a business way. So things like stop using your social security number. You should be using the EIN number. Don't set up a DBA. That's no protection or difference really between you as a person and the business. Set up an actual legal entity, whether it's your corporation, an LLC, what have you, but something more formal that's recognized by the state. So just all those kind of tips that we need to know, because again, a lot of people, yes, we can create a script. We can write a script, right? We can write a book. We can, come up with concepts of things these ideas that we want to sell. But again, how do you build yourself as a business? Because if somebody says, "Oh, I love your script and I think I want to produce it," you say you need $1 million. I want to transfer that to you by Friday. You don't even have a bank account set up. You don't have an LLC set up for the film production. You know what I mean? There's so many things you didn't do. And especially when you're talking to, I mean, in that kind of scenario, that could really be a relative that says, "Oh yeah, I'll feed your dreams." Um, but yeah, I think it's important for anybody that's in the arts, in entertainment, to certainly pick up the book and take a look at it. It's a fast read. It's like a reference book, and yeah, and so it'll help anybody in business.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure I put it in the show notes so everybody can get a copy of it. As a kind of interesting crossover from attorney to, actress, producer, author, even working with your nonprofit, what is something you would want filmmakers, independent filmmakers to know? Is there any kind of, final parting words from an entertainment lens? What would you want to ensure filmmakers and creatives know?
Uh, well, I already told you my philosophy of how important it is to picking the right attorney, right? Um, but I think there's a couple of things that I would suggest. So if you are a poet, if you're a writer, if you're an actor, maybe you want to put on a one person show, you're a comedian, you want to put on a comedy show, you're a filmmaker, you want to make a movie. Regardless of who you are in the business, and I understand that the end goal is to produce a product, right? A final product. You still have to know and understand the business that you're in. You have to understand the market that you're entering into. And that becomes very important when you're having conversations with financiers, people who could potentially invest in your IP, invest in your production. And you have to defend yourself in that presentation when it comes to what support do I have? What concrete support do I have for my project to show that it's worthy of this investment? Right? Being
Yeah.
familiar with the market, understanding distribution, right? Having a
Yep.
finance plan, having a distribution plan, protecting that IP. Have you registered it with the Copyright Office? Things of that nature that just kind of prepare yourself in dealing with professionals that might give you money. Having to have some understanding of what film incentives are, in the market that you're in. But obviously being able to show some understanding of how I'm going to reduce the risk for my investors, right? And how that investor is likely to see some return on his money. I've done all the work. I've checked all the boxes. It's like your dissertation and you're defending it, right? Before an investor. And so the idea is you want to come off as I'm professional. I've done this before, or I put the right team around me. Trust me, I'll be a good steward of your money. My project is solid. There's things that are certainly out of your control. You can do everything you're supposed to do, right? And you have the investor locked, and he invests in the film. All the marketing and everything is taken care of. We can't predict stuff like COVID necessarily, right?
Yeah.
But when I say one of the things I say is control the controllable. So control your part of the things that you're in charge of,
Yeah.
in this project. So yeah, that's essentially what I want. Everybody should educate themselves, have some understanding of what you're jumping into. And there's a whole wave of people becoming filmmakers that, oh, I have $5,000. Let me go make a movie. And they might make a movie, but did they really produce the movie? With some understanding of all the professional components that you have to deal with to come across as a real professional in this business.
Yeah, I like that delineation because, sometimes just because you can,
Right,
I'm
right,
not so
exactly.
sure every time you should. Now, I'm not saying you can't do an extremely low budget film. I think, people prove that every day, but I do
Yeah,
wonder it's well, at a certain point, if it's not a loss leader and you're actually um, you're not going to produce the thing that you're hoping for. You might have been better off doing a concept piece or a short with intentionality behind it,
absolutely see
raise
that.
the production value. There's no ROI per se on a short, but
Yeah, yeah.
neither is it a bad feature. Your ROI is not strong.
Right, right. That's
What
true.
what do you have next on your docket? What's next for you, and where can people find you, including picking up your book? What's the best way to get a hold of you if they did want to reach out to retain you?
Yeah, yeah. Couple of things. Well, here's the book since you were talking about it,
Oh,
and it's on
awesome.
Amazon. Yeah, that's a copy of the book. And it's a book that came out some years ago, but it's still around and it's been a great reference point for many people. So, but I have a number of other books that are on my website. They can go through my website, and there's books about financing, finding funding, um, you know, um, it's a different philosophy. I have some about, being the best lawyer you can be, being a phenomenal woman. So I have some that's more philosophical in that regard, but then a lot of them that are dead on related to the entertainment industry. There's a free book on there called The Entertainment Entrepreneur. And so it alludes to some of the things that we were talking about that you can find in this book. And it says just a little free grab. Some of them are longer than others, so I kind of call them e-guides, ebooks, guides, and books. But yeah, they can go on my website and find those. And then one of the big things I have coming up this fall, I will be joining the academic staff at University of Houston for their inaugural film certificate program. So I'll be an adjunct professor teaching law and finance in production. So I'm excited about that. Class starts in August. So, once you have your script and you have some understanding of the general business, it's like, well, how do I get this project financed? And so those are the kind of things that I'll talk about in the class, and I'm excited about that. And then where you can find me is at jalenemack.com. And I'm on social media under all the platforms. I'm very active on LinkedIn and Instagram. And I have a nonprofit for the arts, which is Mac Performing Arts Collective, Impact for short. And they can venture over to our social media pages, Houston MPAC. I post a lot of content related to arts and entertainment. We do workshops and events and panel discussions. We had a panel discussion with an actor and a stunt person from the Sinners movie just about 3 weeks ago. So that was a lot of fun. And so we always bring some interesting people on there. And that's my outreach way of helping the masses, with the business of entertainment. Because my goal is for everybody to be successful in the business. And so that's one of the reasons why you find me on all the social media, just dropping little gems, little words of advice and encouragement. And yeah, there you go.
Yeah, well, no, that's definitely how I found you. Was just reading your posts and things. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so I definitely
Yeah.
appreciate your time today, Jalene. I think we are good to conclude our conversation with Jalene Mack, Esquire. I hope that you all appreciated the conversation. If so, please do like, subscribe, leave a comment so Jalene and I know that you're out there. And remember, nothing is wasted. Now go make your movie.